force it to yield. You'll forge it to the lines. You let your callous be your shield, and everyone will say that it all was finished years ago, but you will stay, and you won't ever let it go. When you had the answer and you were there alone, you left the door unopened when you knew that you would want more. Then again you found the answer and you were there alone. You left the door unopened when you knew that you would want more. When you had the answer and you were there alone, you left the door unopened when you knew that you would want more. Then again you found the answer and you were there alone. You left the door unopened when you knew that you would want more. For us entwined, draw four separate lines, another and point to you. A tangled mess of knots I confess, but the intent was there. I swear he set our sights on something that we thought was true. So now we sit and stare across a surface spanning the whole state. 2 feet between and miles apart. No one's to speak, and here all weekend still we haven't got a clue. It falls apart. There's not a heart to beat there. It falls apart. There's not a heart to have. It falls apart.
Alrighty, chat. Let's get started. Welcome to another HealthyGamerGG stream. Just a reminder that although I am a psychiatrist, hello, my name is Dr. Alok Kanoja. Nothing we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken for medical advice. Everything is for educational or entertainment purposes only. If y'all have a medical concern or question, please go see a licensed professional. Hello, chat. I hath returned. Oh, it seems like our chat box is not working, but so be it. So welcome, everybody. Happy Friday, everyone. today we're going to do something super fun. We're going to review voicemails again. We've got some banger voicemails. I hope to get through somewhere between 4 and 6. As y'all know, sometimes I am a touch verbose, and so we'll see how many we can get through. First of all, thank you to everyone for submitting them, because I know that many of y'all submitted voicemails. We loved listening to many of them. A lot of them are great. It's just an issue of like how much we have time for. I'd love to respond to each and every single one, but that's not probably something we have time for. So thank y'all very much for submitting them. I think they're awesome, and I appreciate y'all keeping them to like around 90 seconds. It's a really nice blend of like depth and also being able to kind of get through a couple in one stream. Before we dive into the voicemails, we are going to talk about a couple of very simple things. The first is that we have our first, I don't know if it's our first. So we have our first ever game jam. So it starts on September 1st. And hold on. Yeah, there we go. So it starts on September 1st, lasts for about 1 month. You can join solo or with teams of up to 6 people. No experience is required, and it's open to everyone: programmers, writers, voice actors, artists, etc. Winners get Steam gift cards, and we'll even show off some of the winners on stream. The theme for your games has to... there's a theme that's going to be announced on day 1. But we've built a Looking for Teams forum on our Discord that's already full of people getting ready for the challenge. So maybe a team is looking for what you have to offer, your skills, and even if that's your total noob, that's okay. So y'all can use the command !game jam for a link in chat. Next thing is we actually launched a new feature, which hopefully y'all can see here. So this is we have like a search feature now. So we finally, after all of these years, we've got, over 1,000 videos on YouTube. And if y'all are looking for something, y'all can use this. Oh, no, not that. The search button over here. And that will take you to this page that has all of our videos. So it has YouTube stuff, it has shorts, it has guide videos, it has meditation videos. So all of our content has now been localized in one place. And this is actually pretty cool. Here are the most searched things that we have. So I don't know if you guys, I gotta make sure that y'all, y'all can't see that. Oh, hold on. Okay. So these are the most searched terms. So purpose is at the top of the list. Trataka, life purpose, meditation, addiction, money, Trataka, lowercase, I guess. Weird, chakra, sleep, trauma, yoga nidra, consistency, heart, glishta, life purpose, I suppose, or maybe that's just life P. I'm not quite sure. So we've got a lot of cool searches that people are doing, and it seems like life purpose is the top of the list. So yeah, some cool stuff is happening. Thanks to our awesome devs and for building this, and it's available for free. You just need to have an account on HealthyGamer.gg in order to use the search feature, but it's free. You don't have to buy anything. Okay, so people have been like requesting some of this stuff for like years. All right, so let's get to the voicemails. Let me see if I can figure out. I was having trouble with this yesterday. Okay, hold on a second, chat. Let me see if I can get... I don't think this is actually plugged in, but we're going to see. Star Sector shortcut. Hell yeah, dude. What did y'all expect, chat? What did you expect? There was a cool patch in Star Sector recently. Other things, so I have to confess, y'all, I got in touch with my inner weeb recently, and I went ahead and started playing Metaphor. I was talking to someone who works with us here at Healthy Gamer, and was asking them how far they were in Expedition 33, and they're like, I'm too busy playing Metaphor. So I was like, okay, I guess I have to check this out. But so be it. Okay, let's get started.
Hello, Dr. K.
Can y'all hear
I have
anything?
a question about feeling accomplished at the end of a
Why
long
can't I
day.
hear anything?
I am currently trying to find a steady source of income
Oh no,
until
hold on a
my
second.
employer puts me back to work.
I gotta change this back. Okay, whatever. All right, we're gonna try this again. Okay.
Hello, Dr. K. I have a question about feeling accomplished at the end of a long day. I am currently trying to find a steady source of income until my employer puts me back to work. My bills are coming up and I face eviction. I can only control what I can control, and yet I still feel extremely disappointed in myself and like a constant failure. I have carried this self hatred in me for a very long time, and I also feel like I will never be good enough for myself nor anyone else. It has gotten so bad that I no longer feel comfortable inside my own house, and I either ride my bike or walk around aimlessly until nightfall. I feel both trapped inside my own house and antisocial towards people I feel interested in getting to know. I feel like no matter what I do, I will never be accepted, no matter how hard I try. I feel stuck, powerless, isolated, and constantly irritable towards the outside world. I can only describe this as hell on earth for me. Is there anything I can do to not beat myself up as much as I do, and to finally accept what I cannot change? I have not been able to relax in weeks as I have felt insanely stressed. Any general life advice you can give me about making money or meeting new people would be beyond appreciated. Thank you for everything, Dr. K. Take care.
Yeah, so this is like, first thing is like, this is brutal, man. So, you know, this person is describing living in what they describe as hell on earth. And, you know, I think there's so many things going on here. I think it's a great voicemail because it highlights like how many dimensions are involved when our life becomes, as he puts it, hell on earth, right? So the first thing is, I think this is like something that we, generally speaking, grossly underestimate in the field of psychiatry. Just how bad how someone's mental state is influenced by their circumstances. So generally speaking, I'm a pretty lucky guy. I've had things go my way most of the time, but I have had some rough patches in life. And one of the things that I still remember, I was when I was about to start medical school, I had talked to some people who were like also starting in the class, and they had sort of found a place, and I had sort of found roommates, like two other first year medical students, and sort of like, you know, they felt really confident and they sent pictures and things like that. And I was like, you know, I'm glad you guys found a place. I don't want to sign a lease until like I've seen the place. So I went to go see the place, and I noticed that there was something really weird, which is that there's like there were 3 bedrooms, and one of them was tiny and the other 2 were like pretty big. And so I was like kind of confused about the rent split and things like that. So like things just sort of didn't work out. We weren't able to come to an equitable solution. And I'm starting med school in like 3 days, and then suddenly I don't have a place to live. And I remember like not being able to eat, also wandering around. Like anytime I would eat food, I would feel incredibly nauseous. Here I am, like this is my shot. Like I finally made it in med school. I'm like working really hard, and like I don't have a place to live. And the thing that I really learned there was just physiologically, like all of the yogic training and all that stuff kind of went out the window when your physiology is running ragged. So my cortisol level was through the roof. I was unable to eat. I was unable to sleep. I was like incredibly restless. And so the first thing that I kind of noticed is this person said, I'm looking for some way to make money while my job is like, has me on hold or something. And if y'all are struggling in life, if you feel really bad about yourself, the first thing that we have to understand is that if you are in a chronically high stress state, right, where like your job has you on hold, you're being threatened with eviction, and you're scrambling to like make money, that in and of itself is going to be a gigantic stressor. And one of the things that I think we've got to be really careful about is in assuming that if this is the situation that we're in, if this is what our life actually looks like, if we have very real material threats that our mental space is going to be very difficult to fix while these threats exist. And that's just because of the effect of those threats on our brain and our body, right? So when we have a high level of cortisol in our system, when we have sympathetic nervous system activity, it does the following things. The first thing that it does is activates our reticular activating formation. This is a little part of our brain right in the brain stem. This part of our brain governs wakefulness. So this is the part of our brain when it turns on, it wakes us up, right? So when you're asleep and then when you wake up, like, something in your brain is telling you like, hey, it's time to wake up. So cortisol hyperactivates the reticular activating formation, which means that sleeping is difficult. So sleeping is difficult. The second thing that it's going to be doing is messing with your blood sugar. It's going to be causing you to release a bunch of like glucose into your bloodstream in preparation for kind of this fight or flight response, which can also explain why like we walk around so much, because we feel incredibly restless. And the problem with these stress states is that they're designed to help us sacrifice long-term health for immediate survival, right? So why does our brain keep us from sleeping? It's because when these systems evolved, we were trying to avoid tigers in the jungle or being eaten by lions or hyenas or whatever, right? So what the body sort of says is that it's really important for you to not sleep over the next 24 hours or sleep very lightly, don't get restful sleep, so that we don't get eaten in our sleep. The problem is the problems we deal with in today's world are long-term, they're chronic, right? So if you're facing eviction means that the threat persists for like 30 days. And then we run into a really interesting problem, which is that since we're facing this threat for 30 days, our body gets run ragged. And as our body gets run ragged, our capacity to deal with our problems becomes impaired. Because if you're facing eviction, if you're looking for a new job, if you're working on self-acceptance, self-love, whatever, if you're trying to make new friends, being exhausted, run ragged, etc., is like not going to help you over the course of 30 days. So this is where like the first thing that I got to say is that, as long as your material situation is problematic, it is very hard to achieve mental peace, mental healing, mental growth, however you want to put it. And this is where, you're kind of saying, okay, like my job has me on hold. Like this kind of stuff really scares me. So on the one hand, I have no idea what your situation is. I have no idea what your opportunities are. But I think a lot of young people get trapped in a work situation in which they feel like they can't get out of, and they're at the mercy of their job. And so the first thing that I would consider is like, you're looking for some way to make ends meet until your job kicks in. But I would also start looking for another job. Right? So as long as like material stuff, if you don't have a roof over your head, mental health is very hard to achieve. And there's a really great study that sort of talks about this. There was a program in New York called Housing First. And what used to happen is that if you had some form of addiction, you had to be sober in order to get public housing. Right? So if you wanted like the state to give you a place to live, like you have to pass drug tests. The problem is that without having a place to live, it's really hard to get sober. Without having a place to live, when you apply for a job and there's this really simple part of the application, name, address. When you don't have an address for correspondence, it's really hard to get a job. When you're sleeping on the streets, it's really hard to resist some degree of comfort through substance use. Right? So this was kind of like this really interesting like kind of perspective, which is you have to be sober first. And if you can become sober, if you deserve it, then we'll give you housing. But what Housing First essentially found is that it works the other way around. If you give people housing first, even if they're using, their ability to engage in mental health care, their ability to get a job, their ability to like not be on the fucking street so they have a roof over their head helps them with substance use. And what we know is that substance use is very, very context dependent, because a lot of people use like heroin and all kinds of stuff when they were like soldiers in Vietnam. And when they come back to the United States, thankfully, a lot of that substance use stopped, using amphetamines and all kinds of stuff. People used to use all sorts of stuff when they were soldiers in Vietnam. So this is really challenging. And the first thing that I would say is we have a lot of resources through the Healthy Gamer community around career-related stuff. We've got an awesome career coaching program, which is probably the most stable, consistent, and successfully growing part of the services we offer at HG. Started pretty small, maybe about 50 spots, and like it's gradually grown. People find immense value out of it. That may not be something that's accessible to you right now if you're between jobs and facing eviction, but that's why we also have a lot of like free resources, videos, things like that about getting a job, etc. But I think don't mistake fixing the external things in your life. That has to be done. Otherwise, your brain is just going to be running ragged. Now, the second thing, so that's sort of like one piece, okay? And in terms of concrete advice, there simple things are, first of all, polish up your resume. Do some research on how to polish up a resume. Second thing is, I think like networking is really undervalued. So we're reaching the state in the world right now where like applying for a job is a total mess, right? So you have these companies that they sort of did it first where they started using AI. So like they started using AI and they started using like these mega websites like Indeed and Monster.com or whatever, right? So like you had all these employers that are like filtering thousands of applications. And now employers are really upset because the people who are applying for jobs are also using AI. So you have some like automatically generated email where they ask you to upload, you submit your resume and then they have like 15 pages where they want you to manually input your resume. And now what's happening is like you have an AI employer, an employer who's using AI, and a prospective employee who's also using AI. So it's just sort of like AI talking to AI. So in a world like this, employers are really unsatisfied, employees are really unsatisfied, and that's why I think networking becomes really, really important, right? So go to job fairs, go to events or professional events of things that you're interested in. Go to conferences, meet people, grab business cards, introduce yourself to all the people at booths. Like go to all these booths and just ask people, hey, are y'all hiring? Are y'all looking for someone who's, or are y'all hiring? Just ask. Meet people. Go to these networking events and introduce yourself and things like that. Right? And I think like people are starved for like real human beings in a world of AI. So I'd say that, polish up your resume, start meeting people. You'll be amazed at how many job opportunities arise. Like everyone's like, I'm applying for 1,000 jobs a day because that's how it's done nowadays. And meeting an actual human being who's like a decent human being who seems motivated, capable, like showed up, right, which is what 50% of a job is, will be a huge leg up over like all of these faceless 1,000 AI generated applicants who are like drafting emails and asking ChatGPT to build them a resume, and it's becoming more and more and more generic. Okay. Now we get to the psychological stuff, and this I think is really interesting. So the first is I'm a huge fan of aimless wandering. And I have had literally years of my life where I used to do that. So when I was in Boston, first moved there, didn't really have a job, didn't really have a way to pay my bills and things like that. I used to walk a lot, like hours and hours and hours. I think it's a really great way to process emotions. I used to also like walk to the grocery store, like carrying, pounds and pounds and pounds of groceries. And it would be like a 45-minute trip each way. And I think like that really helped me. So I think that when I hear someone is like wandering around, right, you want to be safe. But I think generally speaking, like that's a form of emotional processing. It's a form of getting rid of all of that excess glucose that your body is dumping into your bloodstream because your cortisol levels are really high. It can actually be really good. So I think that's something that you're doing that sounds really good. For those of y'all that feel stuck, I think walking is a great option. Now, the last thing that we have to really talk about is you say that you have to walk and, you're wandering around because you hate being at home. And this is where I think there's a really important bit of work. So, and that's like, what is it that you experience when you're at home? What is it that you're actually literally walking away from, running away from, biking away from? Because oftentimes when you wander, and I know that's how it was for me, like I had to just get out. Like I could not be here. And for me, it was like this flood of like negativity that would just dominate my mind. And like, I would think about it and think about it and think about it, and nothing would ever get better. So I just had to get the hell out. I had to escape these four walls. And I'm not saying that you should go home and sit in that mess, but I think a great place to start is when you're running away from your four walls. In the middle of your walk, sit down somewhere and let some of those thoughts come. Let some of that stuff come. Right? So usually when you're in these four walls, you get bombarded with too many thoughts at the same time. And when you get bombarded, you can't really deal with them. But when you walk, something really cool happens. You start to get exhausted. So as you start to walk a lot, your blood sugar starts to drop, right? Because you're using your muscles, biking, whatever. You start to breathe more heavily, right? So your respiratory pattern changes. You start to take more deep breaths. Your exhalation, your rate of exhalation may increase. You start to physically exhaust yourself. That's why we walk. Because when we're physically exhausted, we become mentally calm. Right? So then if you sit down, you'll notice that there is a dullness to your mind. But that dullness is amazing. Rather than having hyperactive thoughts that are like looping, now that you're exhausted, now that you've walked, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. You're running out of blood glucose, right? So then you're starting to calm down, sit on a park bench somewhere, and let whatever thoughts come, let whatever thoughts arise, let them come. And just try to pick one or two things to work on, right? You may notice that something floats to the surface because while you're walking, your brain is doing a ton of processing. And this is where whatever floats to the surface, there's one really critical mistake that a lot of people make, which is that when problems arise in their mind, they view them abstractly. Okay? Let me see if I can pull up some language about this. Hold on. I want to show you guys a paper. Hold on. Give me a second. Ah. Can't find what I'm looking for. Nope. Okay, hold on. I can find it. I got it, chat. Give me a second. Give me a second. Okay. Okay, here we go. Found it. Okay, thanks for being patient with me, chat, okay? So this is a great paper on rumination. And if you look at people who get stuck in their own heads, right? This is rumination. They use something called an abstract processing style for their thoughts. And this is a huge problem. So if you're someone who ruminates, who gets one problem stuck in your head, and you can't solve it no matter, you have a bunch of useless thinking about it. You can't stop thinking about it. You're thinking, but it never gets better. One of the reasons it never gets better is because the way that you view things is abstract, okay? There is now extensive evidence that there are different processing styles during rumination, each with distinct helpful versus unhelpful consequences. The processing style characteristic of the phenomenology of depressive rumination, especially the most pathological brooding style, is abstract and analytical. I want y'all to understand what this means. If you are abstract and analytical, it will cause problems for your mental health, okay? This processing involves general, superordinate, decontextualized mental representations that convey the essential meaning, causes, and implications of goals and events, the why aspects of an action. In contrast, there is a more adaptive processing style, which is more concrete, that involves a focus on the direct, specific, and contextualized experience of an event. This processing mode addresses the details of goals, events, and actions that denote the feasibility mechanics and the means of how to do an action. Now, I know that that's a lot of different information, so let's explain what that means. Some of us are abstract thinkers. And what we know is if you study people who ruminate, who think over and over and over again, what we find is the ones who think abstractly when they ruminate run into all kinds of problems. These are people who generalize things way too much. They also decontextualize things. So they form meta-level conclusions, usually about themselves, that are independent of context. I'm a loser. All women are bitches. Right? Now that I've never dated anyone, I'm never going to be able to date anyone. These are general, superordinate, abstract meta constructs. I'm screwed. I'm a loser. They're not contextual. It's not that I lost in this situation because of these 3 or 4 different things, and then I lost in this other situation because of these 3 or 4 different things, or like they remove all context. They remove all concrete information. And they focus on why, right? Why is the world this way? Why am I alone? Why? And they think in big picture, oh yeah, like there's like all of the elites are now ruining everything in the world and I'm not an elite and there's the elites and I'm a pleb, and like they think in these ways. And it's not that that stuff isn't true. Let me be very clear about this. This is not about whether that is true or not true. It is about whether it is useful or not useful. And there's research on this, right? The research on rumination shows that people who brood and think in an overly abstract way, this is not actionable. If I'm a loser and the elites have all the power, what do I do when I wake up on a Wednesday morning? What action do I take? And what's way more useful is a concrete processing. A concrete way of thinking. What is the context that put me here? What are the individual circumstances that are contributing to this situation? Because the cool thing is if you think about the context of a particular failure or problem, if you change that context, the outcome of the problem can change, right? If the reason that I failed this class is because my bipolar disorder was way too active, that doesn't mean that I'm going to fail forever. That means that if I adjust this bipolar variable, right, if I get appropriate treatment for bipolar disorder, then I can pass. So the moment that you add context to your situation, I'm a loser, that's not something that you can fix. Right? That's like, what do you do about that? I don't know. So be very concrete. Focus on how. And this is what people with rumination, people who ruminate, who get stuck in their own head, this is what people really struggle with. They have a lot of difficulty thinking in this way. And this is really important to understand. It doesn't mean that you can't think in this way. It just means that it's difficult. So oftentimes what these people will also do is if I ask you, what is the context that is creating the situation, they say, I can't think of anything. And then they conclude that means that there is nothing. Huge mistake. Okay? Just because you can't think of something doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And this is exactly where they have difficulty because their brain is not able to see contextual variables. It requires way more stretching of their calculative function to be able to find these concrete variables. Their brain is very tuned to abstract, big picture, meta, superordinate kind of ideas, right? They're deep thinkers, big thinkers, but they have a lot of difficulty thinking about how, the mechanism, the concrete stuff, the contextual stuff. So what I do is take a long walk, sit down for a little while, let something float through to the surface, and then focus on the context that is creating your problems. If you have some negative thoughts about yourself, think about the context of your various failures that allow you to form this meta-level abstract conclusion about yourself. If this variable had changed and this variable had changed, what would have changed? If this variable had changed and this variable would have changed, what would have changed? And in this third instance, if these two variables changed, what would have changed? And then you have your road forward. Now the goal is going to be focusing on changing those variables. right? So here you are in a situation where you're lost, you're walking around, you feel terrible, you don't know how to socialize, you're struggling to socialize. And like, yeah, it's going to be hard to socialize. It's going to be very hard to empathically connect with other human beings because you're burnt out. The first sign of burnout is a lack of empathy for other people. And empathy, if you don't have empathy, it's very hard to form an organic connection with another human being. Doesn't mean you're a loser. Doesn't mean you're an incel. Doesn't mean that you're a beta. If you are burnt out, it's going to be hard to connect to other human beings because your brain is like, we don't have time to think about other people's perspectives. We don't have time to feel what other people are feeling because we're way too busy dealing with the excessive amount of feelings that we have. So it's completely ordinary to be in this situation, okay? It doesn't make you a loser or anything like that. But let something float to the surface and think about, how can I make this concrete? How can I make this actionable? What is the context to my situation, which is creating this particular scenario? How can I alter my context to hopefully change in a positive way, right? So what are the variables that I need to change? That's the way that you need to start thinking. And I remember when I was, wandering through the streets of Boston and feeling really terrible about myself and nauseous, I would sit down at places and I'd be like, okay, like what is like one thing that I need to do? And I still remember to this day, I said, okay, I need to like get some food in my body. And then I sat down and I like tried for like the course of a day, I tried all kinds of things. And what I settled on was plain yogurt and choking down a bagel. So I could eat yogurt, I could eat bananas, and I would force myself to eat a tiny bite of like a bagel, like one bite at a time, and it took me an hour to eat a bagel because I felt chronically nauseous. Those are the kinds of steps that you need to take because now at least my body has some food. Now it's got some calories because I'm burning through calories. How do I get to bed? Fell in love with audiobooks. Right? So I'm going to listen to an audiobook and I'm going to lay down and it'll help distract myself. Eventually I'll fall asleep and it's like, I like reading anyway. So let me just go ahead and do that. So it's really concrete actions to start to turn your life around. And I think it's incredibly hard to be in this situation. I think it's tragic that so many human beings are in the situation that this person described. People are just getting screwed. They're getting like ground down. And hopefully this helps. It's bad, y'all. Bad out there. Okay. Let's do another one. Good luck to you, friend.
Hey, Dr. K, I go by CTR and I'm part of your Discord community. My question to you is, how do you determine whether or not something is degenerate when it comes to activities and hobbies? What are your guidelines? I hear you use the term degenerate gamer, and I've been watching your content for a long time and I've had a degenerate gamer phase. So I think I have a clear understanding of what you mean by that. Sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's endearing. But lately, I've been questioning how we determine these things as an individual and as a society. Why in the year 2025 is gaming still stigmatized and seen as lowbrow by a lot of people, but something like going to an art museum is received a lot better? I know I'm generalizing here, but from my experience, I have an easier time telling people that I go to art museums compared to telling them that I game. And if I were to make the example of going to a gaming cafe compared to going to an art museum, at the end of the day, at their core, I'm still doing the same thing, right? I'm looking at pixels on one end, and on the other side, I'm looking at paintings. Why is that so much better? I could either socialize or not socialize in both situations, but like I said, one is received a lot better. And I want to look at this question both philosophically and practically. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for your time, and hope I get to hear from you.
This is awesome. I love this. Okay. So the first thing is like, sometimes when on this channel, we try to like help human beings. And to be honest, I mean, look, I know it's useful to do that. I know it's like part of our mission here. I know it's important to do. I know people are struggling. We just heard that from the other voicemail. But this is what makes me love this community. I love this question. What does it mean to be degenerate? And let's talk philosophically about whether going to an art museum is somehow superior to looking at pixels on a screen. Okay. So this one may not help y'all very much, but it's one that when I heard, I just fell in love with the question. I love these kinds of things. I love this community, but apologies if this isn't maybe helpful. Okay. So first question number one is what is it a degenerate gamer? So it's funny. I recently tried to teach my kids how to be degenerate. And the problem is that they're not degenerate enough. And this bothers me because like I'm a degenerate. And so it dawned on me that one of the biggest like parenting gifts that I have to give my children is like how to be degenerate. And here's what degeneracy is. So like I had to sit down and I had to figure this out. Like I had to figure out how to explain this to them. So I was trying to tell them, hey, y'all need to take a nap today. And they like don't want to take a nap. They want to waste in the hours like between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. on a weekend. These are the most wasted hours of the day. They're not doing it. They're not on a play date. They're not having very much fun. We're taking a break from like screen time or whatever. And I had to sit down and try to explain to them, hey, if y'all take a nap right now, we don't have to stop playing D&D at 10 o'clock. We can play D&D till midnight. We can play D&D till 1 a.m. And during the week, we're trying really hard to enforce a really healthy bedtime of 8:30 so that they wake up and they're well rested and their brains have plenty of time to consolidate information and their bodies are growing. Like bedtime is 8:30. And they didn't understand this concept of like taking care of yourself now so that you can be debaucherous later. The total amount of debauchery that you can engage in is greater if you do certain things. And so when I heard this voicemail, like, what is a degenerate gamer? Here's what I think of. A degenerate gamer is someone who optimizes the extraction of dopamine from their brain. Your life starts to become structured around this one thing and getting the most out of it. So this is like, I still remember, I've told this before, but like I would order fried rice in 2-pound increments, 1 kg of fried rice. And I would do it to optimize my ability to play this game. I would get Coke I would buy a 6-pack of 20-ounce bottles. Now, y'all may wonder, why wouldn't you get a 2-liter bottle? Because the 2-liter bottle runs out of carbonation too quickly. I need the right amount. If I buy cans, it's more expensive, but 20 ounces is the right level of carbonation. And then I would fuel this binge. So I think a degenerate gamer is someone who optimizes the dopamine extraction from their brain through video games and sacrifices all kinds of healthy stuff due to that degeneracy, right? So it's like, I'm going to fuel myself. And sometimes, like, you know, this sounds so bad, but, you know, so I did a fair amount of addiction psychiatry back in the day. And like, I understood, man. I understood my patients because for many of them, like, you know, when we're talking about an addiction like heroin or meth, it's like, it's all about that thing. It's like the rest of life just disappears. We're willing to sacrifice all other things in order for this thing. And when I was a degenerate gamer, that's what life became. It became a sacrifice of all kinds of things. But here's the really interesting thing. There was this brilliant optimization of this downward direction of my life. I was optimizing how bad I was screwing up my life. That's what degenerate gamer is. It's when you use all of your analytical power to play as many video games as you can while, like, you know, really just accelerating the plunge down to rock bottom. That's what degenerate gamer is. So, you know, I still have a fondness for degeneracy. Like, it's something that I try to engage in from time to time. now I do sort of this, maybe I'll share this with you all one day. Now I'm sort of thinking about it. I did this recently where like now when I do degenerate gaming, I do it in sort of a healthy way, right? So I'll set aside like a 24-hour block where it's like, I'm going to play games. But now that I'm like north of 40, right? I'll do things like I'll do yoga in the morning. And this is what I really love is like, I'll do yoga. I'll go to the gym. Like I'll especially swim if I'm doing a lot of gaming because of my back. I'll do yoga. And here's the really cool thing is like, when you like cook yourself a nice meal, like I'll do something like it, back in when I started to be healthy, I'd like make like a pot of stew and I'd get like a loaf of fresh bread, right? So instead of like 2 pounds of fried rice and a ton of Coke, it's going to be like, I'm going to make this healthy, tasty pot of stew. I'm going to get some fresh bread. I'm going to do yoga in the morning. I'm going to go to the gym and then I'm going to play. Right. And so you're still sort of optimizing your play, but like you're doing it in sort of a healthy way. And this is the really cool thing, like, is that it makes the gaming more fun. It's like when you feel hungry, like there's this pot of food, which is like not going to screw you over for the next 3 days. So I'm still a fan of optimizing the dopamine extraction. It's just you don't have to sacrifice everything for it. I think it's wild, but I'm like teaching my kids how to be degenerate. I'm like, look, if you guys eat this kind of stuff, you're not going to be constipated. And then you could have as much chocolate. Like we're going to have like, you know, chocolate and popcorn, and we're going to play D&D until like midnight. And then I told them the other day, I was like, look, I used to play D&D till the sun came up. We'd go to Taco Bell at like 2 a.m. because it would close at 3. And their minds were blown. Like, here's their dad who's like teaching them yoga, making them go to bed at 8:30. And I was like, I don't think y'all understand. I want to have so much more fun with you. I love playing D&D with y'all, but y'all are fucking amateurs. You can last for 2 hours before you start fighting each other. And you need to like take care of your body so you don't get wiggly. Like you need to do the yoga. You need to eat properly so you don't get constipated. And then we can like run it all night long. Like this is what we're shooting for. Y'all fucking amateurs. Like this, you have a 7-year-old body. You can't run all night long. You really have to optimize it in order to get to midnight or 1 a.m. Right? So it's like, this is what I'm trying to impart in them. And they're learning like that, you know, in a good way. Like I'm really happy with it. They're kind of struggling. So we're going to continue working on it. So that's first thing is degenerate. That's what a degenerate is. Like a degenerate is someone who optimizes their crash towards rock bottom. Now, looking at pixels and looking at paintings, is it the same? So I'm someone who will totally agree that there's an unfair judgment of gaming. So we can talk about great works of art. So I love impressionistic painting. We can talk about great works of art. I think it's super cool. Like art is very cool. There's an exhibit here in Houston called the Murakami exhibit, which is like literally mind-blowing, or metaphorically mind-blowing, I guess. It's like super cool. I've gotten super into art recently and I love it. And is gaming art? Is it the same? And the answer is like yes and no. So I think if you're playing Expedition 33, I think Expedition 33 is one of these games that makes gaming an art form. This is like, here are the forms of art. There's like sculpture and painting and symphony and orchestra. And then occasionally in a video game, we're like entering the field of great art with Expedition 33. Better than cinema. Because with a game, you can do, gaming is a level of art that other forms of art can't touch. Because you've got music, you've got interaction, you've got participation. This is the big thing that makes gaming, I think, a new tier of art. Because most art is not art that you participate in, it's art that you observe. Gaming is the one form of art that I think has a lot of participation. So it activates your brain in different ways. So I think gaming can absolutely be art. But let's be honest. Not all gaming is art, and there is a huge difference. So when I think about something like art, what I think is amazing about it, and especially a game like Expedition, is that it activates like all kinds of stuff in your brain. You feel philosophically activated. Like I've been having this, 2-month conversation with a buddy of mine about the nature of reality, metaphysics, Hindu cosmology, and how Expedition 33 is basically like maps onto a Hindu perspective of what the world is like, the Hindu Buddhist perspective. So it triggers you in lots of different ways. It's beautiful to look at. It's engaging analytically. It like there's all kinds of great stuff in it, right? I think it's awesome. But then there's also like the 14th game of degenerate Dota or like Candy Crush or Clash of Clans or whatever the fuck, like dopaminergic 14-hour what granny. You know, we always talk about video game addiction. Oh, all these kids on iPads. Let's forget about kids on iPads for a second. Let's talk about grandma and grandpa on an iPad. They'll be glued to that shit for like hours. The weirdest complaint that I've ever gotten from a patient of mine is a patient of mine had an in-law who is complaining to my patient that, oh, like, you guys don't like spend, you know, you guys don't send the kids over. Like, I'm not like you guys, y'all are depriving me of time with my grandchildren. And it's like, grandma, when we come over and visit you or when you visit us, you're just on your iPad the whole time while the kids are there. Like, you're not engaging with them in any meaningful way. There's a huge addiction problem in seniors with mobile gaming. That I don't think is the same as art. So gaming is not all the same. Some of it I think is like not activating us in an inspiring and positive way. Some of it is just squeezing the last drops of dopamine out of our nucleus accumbens as we like zone out and become a zombie who's like just glued to a screen. The 14th game of Dota or grinding the Warcraft 3 ladder or whatever. When gaming becomes a grind, I think it's no longer an art form. And I think philosophically, they can be the same, but they're not necessarily the same. I think there are soul-sucking games and there are soul-expanding games. And I think it's an awesome philosophical question. The last thing is it's easier to tell people that you went to an art museum than it is to say that you played a video game. And I think that there's a very real stigma associated with it. I think people don't really get this. And this is, you know, my pet peeve is like sports. Like, I'm convinced that esports is objectively superior to physical sports. Just convinced. So, like, here's the thing. I don't know if you guys watch, like, basketball or football, American football, or soccer, whatever, European football, the rest of the world football. Thing is, those games, like, there's the crazy thing. So if you look at most physical sports, the game is determined by length, right? So, like, in a basketball game, this is what really infuriates me. The last 3 minutes of a basketball game, if it's close, is the most boring, frustrating, blue balls, 45 minutes of your life. Fouls constantly, timeouts constantly, commercial breaks constantly. There's 2 minutes left in the game. The score is even, and it's every 14 seconds we take a 2.5 minute break. Like, the tension is boring AF. And you know what I fucking love? I love Dota. And I love Dota because you don't know when it's going to end. The game can be 25 minutes and it's like, oh my God, it's over. 60 seconds later, they're running down mid. This is over. I didn't realize the game could end right now. Like, so I think that there is an objective level of excitement when you don't know whether a game will end. Tennis, I think, is the best example of this. So tennis has this, right? Because like you don't quite know if it's going to go to 3 sets or 5 sets or like whatever. Sumo is actually a good example. So sumo has this too. Like, is this basho going to be like this long or this long? Like, nobody knows. Right? So like, I think that we do unfairly judge gaming, but I think that there's a lot of like crappy gaming out there that does not deserve to be put on the level of art. So do people judge you harshly if you tell them that you game? Like, yeah, and I think that's okay. Let them judge. They're the ones who are missing out. If you're busy watching basketball instead of watching League of Legends or Dota or like CSGO, like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this clip from MLG or like this, you know, I think this is what put Tarek on the map, if you guys know Tarek. But like this epic clip, like that's what I'm talking about. These are these like moments in gaming history. You know, OG's run at TI8, like moment in gaming history. They're like these moments in gaming history that I don't know if physical sports can like touch. You know, like it's like you just can't have like, there's no like physical sport where it's like, okay, we're playing like American football or let's say we're playing basketball and like there's one player left on the team against a team of like 5 people. And so the amount of tension, the amount of upsets, the scenarios that can be upset, like you just can't do that in a physical sports. It's always like 5 dudes on one team and like 5 dudes on the other team. You're never like 1v5 and the one person wins. And this is where if people want to disrespect you because you play video games instead of going to art museums, I say, fuck them. They're the ones missing out. Right? And I think it's important to consider that, like, if what we say about being a gamer is like, and I say this as someone who did this, right? I do think it's an absolute waste of a couple years of your life if you're gaming for like 10 or 12 hours at a time. I don't think that that's good. Like, the problems with gaming are that, you know, it's not, the skills aren't transferable, first of all. So if you spend like, you know, 4 years of your life grinding, like, I don't know, like Escape from Tarkov or whatever, like, it's not clear that that'll be transferable. There's some amount of FPS skill that is transferable, but generally speaking, you can't like go pro in Fortnite and then go pro in Valorant. It's like really hard to do. And if you look at some of these things like investing in sports or investing in art, I think those are skills that yield more over time. And there's even some neuroscience evidence of that, right? So first of all, if it's a physical sport, using your body is a good thing. But art, I think, like, activates different kinds of your brain in like very like healthy ways. And especially if you're learning later on in life, I think it's going to be really good. Generally speaking, the more diversity that you put into your brain, the more that you make it do new things, the better off you will be. And I tend to find that a lot of games, especially people who get super into one game, become very, very like automatic with it, right? Like these like kind of completionist, like gotcha game sort of things. Like, I don't think that those are good for your brain. I think there's a lot of random reinforcement schedule. I think there's a lot of just like mindless grinding and shooting for things and getting really upset about stuff and like malding and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think gaming and art is the same. Do I think gaming gets a bad rap? Yes. Do I think it deserves a better rap? Yes. But also, I don't think that, you know, paint on a canvas is the same as pixels on a screen. Are you using your eyes in both cases? Absolutely. But the way that your brain is being activated by the two of those is very different. But I love the question. What do y'all think? I'm curious. How would y'all define degeneracy? Hold on a second. Let me see if I can tune into chat more easily. Chat link. Here we go. Yeah, so I think like this using the word irresponsible, I think is like really good, right? So, and I mean, you can be like, I've had patients who are, you know, arguably irresponsible in the creation of their art. I don't think that that's, you know, that can happen too. Yeah, so someone's mentioning, you know, that sports can be degenerate and healthy. So I think there's a different kind, like when I think about unhealthiness in sports, there's a certain obsessional quality, right? So I've worked with athletes who have like body dysmorphia and things like that. Like that's, it can be unhealthy too, but I think the nature of the unhealthiness is different. Art tends to be quieter. Certainly true. But do y'all like to... I sometimes listen to music when I'm at a museum. Is a god gamer a glorified degenerate? I don't think so. So here's the really sad thing. I think god tier gamer is not usually the same as degenerate. There can be some overlap in that Venn diagram, but you know, most people who play games for 16 hours a day are not god tier. Most of them like suck. right? Like you've got some, bronze level person on like Valorant or League of Legends or whatever, who's got like 40,000 hours in the game or something, and like they're still bad. So I don't think that degenerate, and I actually think, and we're seeing this in esports, right? So I had a little jaunt in esports a couple years ago. And I think what we're seeing in esports is that the more degenerate of a gamer you are, the worse you do. The people who really win are people who take care of their bodies, take care of their minds, like learn how to meditate, start working out, start eating healthy. They do all this stuff, and then they put in the hours. They'll, play for 12 to 16 hours, go to meetings, things like that, discuss strategy. But it's not degeneracy at all. Like these are some of the hardest working professionals that I've ever seen. And it's relentless. It's like 100 hours a week is like normal for them. So I think it's very different. That's cool. Someone became a chess instructor. Awesome. Would you say gamers in general are idiots who are using it to escape from their life? No, I think this is one of the big problems. This person was talking about the stigma of gaming. I think one of the biggest problems that we have right now is that gamer used to be like one group, right? So like when I was in college, let's say like 2001, so 24 years ago. So I think at that point, gaming was far more homogenous. But I think you can't say gamers are anything now. I mean, you can like do research on fluid IQ and stuff, and you can make some claims about gamers, but I think gaming is now so diverse that it's hard to say gamers are this. Do a lot of people use video games as an escape from life? Yes. But I don't think that that's all gamers. I think most, like, part of what's cool about it is nowadays the demographic of gaming is changing very rapidly. You have tons of successful professionals who are gamers. So they don't all use it as an escape for life. I think it is a very common, maybe the most common escape from life that we see amongst people nowadays. So it's easy to think about it. So are there gamers who escape from life? Yes. But are there gamers who don't escape from life? Absolutely. And then you also have these like, World of Warcraft weddings where it's like, that's not escaping from life. Now it's like, I'm going to get married to this person that I'm in a guild with. And like that happens. Okay. Let's move on. Great question. Okay. Y'all ready?
Hello, Dr. K. So, I've grown up in a narcissistic family system for about 2 decades. And even after I escaped, I ended up in the wrong crowd a couple times, had a couple bad relationships. And I've been betrayed a lot because more than anything, I really wanted to trust someone without having my guard up. And I still want that on some level. But because of that, I've trusted people too easily and I've gotten backstabbed and exploited way too much. And it's gotten to the point now where I can't even trust kindness. Like, I see the potential for abuse in it. Like, even if someone gives me emotional support during a difficult time, how do I know they're not trying to figure out what my weaknesses are so they can exploit me later? And even if they reassure me that they're not being abusive or anything, I mean, they could be lying to me, or maybe they're not self-aware of their abusive patterns. Like, the paranoia runs deep right now. And the best answer I've been able to give myself is that deep down, everyone has the potential to be a little bit manipulative or a little bit abusive. And I just have to find people where their good outweighs their abusive tendencies. But I don't know if that's the best answer. So I'm wondering what you think.
What a wonderful question. Okay. So I'm going to say a couple of things that I think are really, really, I hope they're helpful. But they're going to sound harsh. They're not harsh, I hope. I'm not going to try to come across as, so please bear with me, okay? So this is a really common problem because, so here's what happened. Like 10,000 years ago, there was like some narcissistic human being. And then they had children, and they raised their children in a narcissistic environment. And what we know about children who grow up with narcissistic parents is that they will adopt, be socialized or conditioned to some narcissistic traits. And then, 10,000 years ago, this happened, and then they raised a little narcissist, and then that little narcissist grew up, and then they had a child, and then they raised a little narcissist, and it went on to the ages. And so what we tend to see is that if you have like narcissistic parents, or what we know is that narcissism is somewhat transmissible from parent to child. And when I say transmissible, there may be a component that's genetic, but a lot of it is the way that you are taught to relate to other human beings. So one of the biggest challenges, if you are someone who grew up with narcissistic parents, is that you will have narcissistic ways of thinking. Now, that doesn't mean that you're a narcissist and it's not your fault. It's like literally you are taught a certain mode of interacting with other people. And until you realize that that mode may have been internalized, you will continue to run into these problems. And so this person is saying, okay, I came up with a solution, which is like maybe everyone has the capacity to manipulate, everyone has the capacity to be kind, and I just have to look for the right people. Okay, so I want to show this to y'all. We're going to listen to this voicemail again. I'm not saying you're a raging narcissist, bro. But there are certain patterns of narcissistic thinking, okay? So we're going to listen to this voicemail again, and I'm going to jot down some phrases, okay? And then we'll see.
Hello, Dr. K. So I've grown up in a narcissistic family system for about 2 decades. And even after I escaped, I ended up in the wrong crowd a couple times, had a couple bad relationships, and I've been betrayed a lot because more than anything, I really wanted to trust someone without having my guard up. And I still want that on some level. But because of that, I've trusted people too easily, and I've gotten backstabbed and exploited way too much. And it's gotten to the point now where I can't even trust kindness. Like, I see the potential for abuse in it. Like, even if someone gives me emotional support during a difficult time, how do I know they're not trying to figure out what my weaknesses are so they can exploit me later? And even if they reassure me that they're not being abusive or anything, I mean, they could be lying to me, or maybe they're not self-aware of their abusive patterns. Like, the paranoia runs deep right now. And the best answer I've been able to give myself is that deep down, everyone has the potential to be a little bit manipulative or a little bit abusive. And I just have to find people where their good outweighs their abusive tendencies. But I don't know if that's the best answer. So I'm wondering what you think.
So I think this is a great example. So first of all, like, props to this person, because the first step to overcoming this narcissistic conditioning, which is kind of what I would call it, is to like question and reflect. That is the main thing that narcissists don't do. So when I talk about narcissistic conditioning, what do I mean? So let's understand a little bit about narcissism, and then we'll go back to the list, okay? So when a narcissist goes through life and they feel hurt, the instrument of agency for me being hurt is something outside of me, right? So like, the reason I'm hurt is because of what people do to me. They betray me. They exploit me. I end up with the wrong crowd, right? So I want y'all to think about the responsibility, and not in a negative way. Responsibility is not the right word. It has a bad connotation to it. I want you to think about the agency. Oh, I ended up. Well, whose fault is that? Not mine. I didn't make a mistake. I ended up here. I got betrayed. I got exploited. I want to trust so bad. I just want kindness. I want, like, I want people to like me. I want to be free. And it's great. Like, you want all those things. Like, those are wonderful things to want, really human things to want. But I want y'all to pay attention to the language. Things are happening to this person. That's the key thing about narcissism. It's not I am doing it. I'm not responsible for it. Things are happening to me. If I get hurt or something bad happens in my life, other people are the ones responsible. And so this makes sense, right? So what is this person looking for? This person is, I jotted this down. This person wants to find the right people. Right? Because if I can find the right person, if the fundamental unit of agency, if what determines my life is the people outside me, these people are betraying me, these people are exploiting me. So if I look, I will find some people who love me. And then I'll be okay. This is never going to work. And the problem is that it fits within the narcissistic frame, which is that my life is going to be determined, my happiness, everything that happens to me is determined by the people around me. You wore that dress to make me feel fat. You got a new car to make me feel like I'm a failure. You are making me feel this way. You're betraying me. You're exploiting me. You're doing it to me. I want you to love me. And love comes from you too. And this is what's so hard about it. It's not this person's fault. This is like literally the conditioning that I've seen time and time and time again. Because what this person, I want y'all to understand this, what this person internalizes, right? So it's not their fault, because this is like literally when you're fucking 3, okay? And like your parent walks up to you and says, you just ruined my day for like shitting in your diaper, right? You ruined my day. The way that I feel is determined by you. Now I'm upset. Now I'm disappointed. Now I'm angry, and it's your fault. My internal state is determined. I have no agency. I can't do anything about it. Holy crap. You pooped your pants at the age of 3. It's not like it ever crossed my mind that if you're pooping your pants, that's because I didn't potty train you, because, oh, right, I'm the parent. I'm supposed to teach you how to potty train. Never crosses their mind. They blame people around them for their circumstances. They ended up this way. They didn't choose, oh yeah, I'm just a victim of my circumstances. So not this person's fault, really. This is what gets passed down. Now, is it genetic? Is it nurture? Is it something about conditioning? I imagine it's like all of the above, okay? But this is what's so scary, because it's so subtle. It's the way that and so when you're like 3 years old and your parent tells you like, oh, this is your fault, you internalize that structure. There's no way to not internalize that structure unless you're like enlightened, I suppose. So these kids grow up and they move through life feeling like I have to find the right people because the people are responsible for me. And then this person is doing really great because they're reflecting, right? They're like, okay, I have this pattern. They are asking this question. They're trying to question what's going on. And here's the really cool thing. You can absolutely break free of this, but you need to change your fundamental way of thinking. They're saying, how do I find the right people? It's not about finding the right people. This is where we get to some of the fun stuff, okay? So when this person was talking, right? So trusted too easily. Can't trust kindness. How do I know? So now the question becomes, why do you trust too easily? What is it within you that selects for people who are going to betray your trust? Right? So there's some signal that you're sending out. And when you say betrayed or exploited, I wonder what they would say. What is their side of the story? Right? So I don't know if y'all have ever dealt with someone with narcissistic conditioning. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying this person is a narcissist, right? And the way that they're like, oh yeah, you're like exploiting me. And you're like, I'm not doing anything, bro. I just asked you for a favor. I've done you favors. I'm asking you for a favor in turn. And suddenly that's exploiting you? Right? There's a lot of this strong language. And I'm not saying the person wasn't exploited. Very possible they were exploited. Quite likely they were exploited. If that's what they're going to say, we are going to accept that at face value and still be a little bit questioning of it. We're going to accept it, but we have the thought in the back of our mind that maybe there is some form of miscalculation here. Okay, so we just accept that you've been betrayed. Even if that's the case, trust too easily. You can't trust kindness. How do you know? You know by paying attention to yourself. You know by the way that you fix this is by fixing this. So how do you find someone that you can let your guard down, that you can trust them completely and they're not going to take advantage of you? You pay attention to them. You work on yourself some. You don't utilize them for whatever it is that you're utilizing them for. So this person says, I ended up in the wrong crowd. Hold on a second. Because ending up in the wrong crowd is a series of decisions and a series of feelings. Now you're over here. And then there's another feeling. And there's another action. And now you're over here. And then suddenly, before you realize it, you're in the wrong crowd. And so I don't doubt that they ended up in the wrong crowd, but it's not that ending up in the wrong crowd. This is the key thing. The main thing that someone with narcissistic conditioning needs to learn is that they are responsible. Right? If I feel like you are making me look fat because of the dress that you're wearing, that's not on you. This feeling that I have is coming from me and is my responsibility. Because I look at you and I feel insecure, now I'm blaming you for making me look bad. But that insecurity is from me. So I think the key thing here is you don't have to just hope that, and this person sounds super smart, and they're right? So we all have the capacity to manipulate. We all have the capacity for kindness. We all have both of those things. Absolutely correct. But this person is spot on that this seems like a terrible way to navigate life. It's going to get you screwed over and over and over again. So I think what you really need to do if you're in a situation like this is pay attention to this. That in your life, you will have a chain of feelings and actions that will wind you up, that you wound up in a place. You ended up in a particular place, surrounded by certain kinds of people. Right? And who is it that betrayed your trust? Maybe you spent time with people who were really, really kind to you and asked to borrow $20. And they're like, oh, you're such a great person. You're such a great friend. I can trust you so much. You're so kind. And like, you were like, right? And then that person will exploit you. They're already exploiting you, but it feels so good. Oh my God, I'm such a saint. Oh my God, tell me how much I'm a saint. And why are you so addicted to that? Because you didn't get it from your parents. Right? This person sounds Indian. It's weird. The accent. I don't know if it sounds Indian to you. Maybe I'm wrong. But like, it's like, it's really hard because, Indians are some of the, I'm sure they're not any more narcissistic or less narcissistic than other people. It's just a flavor of narcissism I'm really familiar with. So in parts of Indian culture, also East Asian culture, right? So there's a certain amount of narcissism that is respectable. We're the best. We're the brightest. Harvard, IIT, MIT, Google, Facebook, right? Not like Doctors Without Borders. Psh. World Health Organization. Psh. Like that, helping the world, right? Unless it's a mega guru. Oh yeah, I work for Google and then I go to my mega guru on the weekend. And it's the best guru, not the guru that you've never heard of. It's the mega guru. It's the most famous guru. Oh yeah, I did a weekend retreat with the most famous guru and I met the most famous guru. And wonderful. Right? This is sort of the attitude. So I think the key thing here is that it's not about finding the right people. It's about looking at yourself. And what is it that causes you to respond to the wrong people in a particular way? What causes you to run away from the right people? And I know this sounds crazy, but there's a great paper called The Repetition Compulsion. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Which is something that I think originally Freud talked about. But it's this I know I have it. Give me a second, chat. But we tend to like seek out people who continually hurt us. Here we go. Right, this is like old. Okay, so this is like from residency days. Let me show you all this paper real quick. Nice, it's already here. Okay, so, the role of loss and the repetition compulsion, this is by Paul Russell. This is a great paper about, how we seek out the same kinds of people over and over and over again. And that we have like, all this unconscious stuff, this stuff that's suppressed, like whatever. We don't need to go into it. But the key thing is that like, if you're someone who has one of these kind of like narcissistic upbringings, there's a really good, and it's not just narcissistic, it's also like abusive, right? So you're going to be seeking people out that make you comfortable. That's not healthy, but you'll feel comfortable. You'll feel like you understand what's going on. They'll make you feel good in some way. There's some part of you that will gravitate towards it. And so if you're ending up with the wrong crowd, if you continually get betrayed and exploited, you need to be more careful about who you choose to spend your time with. And then you ask yourself the very logical question, how do I find the right people? But that's not, even though it's a very good question, very logical question, it's not the right question. The question is, what are the signals within you that induce you to gravitate towards these wrong people? Because you certainly know who the wrong people are, right? And so then what is it that made you wind up there? What were you chasing? And then try moving in the opposite direction. And it's really about introspection. What is going on within me? And this is why this is hard for people who have narcissistic conditioning, which is literally why like a really good treatment for narcissistic personality disorder is something called mentalization-based therapy. And what mentalization is, this is something that people with narcissism really struggle with, is when they look at other people, they don't understand that someone, not understand is not the right word. Their brain is not able to calculate that someone else's behavior is driven by all kinds of internal things, right? All they see is the injury to them. So let me explain. So if you wear this dress, and then I say you're wearing this dress to make me feel bad. Oh my God, my handwriting is so terrible, chat. Okay. You're wearing this dress to make me feel bad. This is an action that induces a feeling within me. And what narcissists lack, like literally their brain has difficulty making this calculation, is that this action was done because you wanted this result. Since this resulted in this, this is the same as the why. This is why you did it. I feel this way, therefore you did it because these reasons. This is all they have awareness of. They don't have awareness that this person has feelings, desires, insecurities that lead to this action. They have no vision of this, right? It's not about you. There are other things involved. That's the difficulty that narcissists have. The other difficulty that narcissists have is when someone is a narcissist and takes an act, they are also blind to the thoughts, feelings, insecurities in themselves that result in this act. They don't have access to this. So if you're struggling with this kind of problem and you have what I would call narcissistic conditioning, which is you grew up in a household of narcissists, you were probably blind to this. And this is why it feels like you ended up somewhere. Because you're not aware of these drivers of your behavior. And you ended up getting exploited. You ended up getting betrayed. There were probably signals that this person was exploitive, signals that this person was maybe inclined to betray you, or they didn't deserve that much trust from you. And this is where I want to trust so bad. So when you want to trust so bad, what do? You ignore red flags that get in the way of the dream that you want. And this cycle, by the way, gets worse. I want to trust. I get disappointed. And then what happens to my desire for trust? My desire for trust increases. Now I want it so much more. I've been betrayed. All I want it so bad. I want it so bad. I want it so bad. When you start wanting it more so bad, then you ignore more red flags. And then since you want it so bad, oh my God, all I've ever wanted was someone to love me. And now this person is love bombing me. Oh my God, they're love bombing me. Oh my God, it feels so good. And then they start abusing me. And then after I get out of that relationship, all I want is to be loved. And so I will ignore the red flags in the future. Happens all the time. Repetition compulsion. It's why people who grow up in abusive households end up with abusive partners. Very common, right? Increases the risk. If you have an abusive parents, you're more likely, increases the risk for you to have an abusive romantic relationship. And so what this person really needs to do, and what everyone with narcissistic conditioning needs to do, and everyone without narcissistic conditioning needs to do, what everyone can benefit from is this and this. Right? Recognize that there are things within you that are driving you in this situation. And as you become aware of this stuff, as you become aware of what your drivers are, the way you're thinking, the way you're feeling, something cool will happen. Then when you interact with people, since you're aware of all of this stuff and you're aware of all of this stuff, now you can be more discerning, because this stuff is bad and this stuff is good. And this person makes you feel really good, and this person makes you feel somewhat uncomfortable. And actually, the relationship that you need to go for is this one, not this one. Because this person is making you feel great, but they're doing it in kind of a shady way. And even though this person is being open and accepting, they're making you feel insecure because they're comfortable in their body. And if you spend more time with them, maybe you will learn how to be comfortable in your body. That'll rub off on you. And this is really hard, but it's really opening up these dimensions of awareness. And for this particular person, and I think this is a great exercise for people who have narcissistic conditioning, if you ended up somewhere, look at the process of ending up somewhere. Look at what happened with you. What were all of the steps? And the better resolution and the better detail you have, the better off you're going to be. How did you end up here? What were you feeling? What did you do? What did they do? How did that make you feel a certain way? How did they pull you into this relationship? Because for them to pull you into a relationship, you have to walk with them. Right? They send you a signal and then you have to say yes. That's the big thing that we sometimes have a lot of difficulty understanding, is you are complicit in the creation of this situation. And this is what's so hard about doing therapy with people who are chronically abused, is you have to show them in a non-blaming way that you participated in this reenactment. You actually do have agency. And that also means you have responsibility. That you took certain actions that created this situation. Not your fault, but that's where your power lies. If you didn't create this situation in some way, then you don't have the power to change it in the future. Now, there are various limitations to that philosophy. The top of the list is children who are abused. They oftentimes don't have any agency in the situation. They're just victims. Right? And so then the challenge there is that even if you had no agency at the get-go, what these children come away with is this idea that since I never had agency in this situation, I don't have agency now. It is impossible for me to have agency now. And since they give up their agency as adults, then they find themselves in terrible, terrible situations again and again and again. So then what we have to do is teach them, even though you didn't have agency over here, you do have agency now. Stop giving it up. Really, really tricky tightrope to walk. So what should you do? Pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to other people. Be careful about how your desire for trust and freedom in a relationship, the freedom to trust and not fearing betrayal, how that very driver may attract you to the wrong things. Great question. Let me just see. I'm going to try to catch up with chat. Yeah, so someone said, well, my parents made me a people pleaser. Absolutely. Right? So if you have narcissistic parents, you have been shaped. You've been shaped to be a people pleaser because their needs mattered. Your needs were completely irrelevant. And so if you've been shaped in this way, you'll do one of two things. Either you adopt their role and you become narcissistic towards the people around you, or you continue playing the role that you played growing up, which is why you end up in situations where people will exploit you. Because when you're a people pleaser, that's great. Oh my God. So if you have narcissistic conditioning and I'm a sociopathic narcissist myself, it's going to be, I will love you so much. You're going to be exactly what I'm looking for. Someone who I can betray, someone who I can exploit, and someone who I can blame for all of my shortcomings. Best thing. Best. 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. So be careful about your conditioning. Be careful about your internal programming. Okay. Let's move on.
Hi, Dr. K. My name is Tim. I've been following your work for a while. 2 years ago, I came across 4 videos of you training healthy gamer coaches where you talked about resistance, intent, and action. Out of everything you've shared, those 4 had the biggest impact on me. They reshaped how I understand motivation. I have been using those insights in my own journey as personal coach and corporate trainer. Since then, I've been trying to find more material like this. I know you've recommended motivational interviewing. I have studied that. I even went further to sign up for the master degree of clinical psychology in my country, Vietnam. And I'd love to go even deeper. If you have other frameworks, thinkers, and resources you think are worth exploring, please let me know. And if there's even a slightest chance I could observe how you train your coaches, not for a job, but to grow, I would be incredibly grateful. Thank you for all the work you have already put out. It has a real impact on how I think and teach. Thank you.
Awesome. So it's interesting. So these were some of our contest winners from May about, which voicemails people wanted answers to. So this person is asking, okay, what is the most, do you have other useful frameworks for like understanding people and how to interact with people? Absolutely. We're going to go over it here. And the person said that, okay, watching how you teach coaches was something that was really helpful to them. Awesome. We're glad that it was helpful to you. That's why we share it. So first thing is like we have something called the Healthy Gamer Institute now, where I understand our first 4 cohorts basically filled up, where we teach these skills. So if y'all want to learn these skills, you can like learn them and we will teach you. You may not be able to sign up right this second because, as I said, the first 4 cohorts are full, but our coach certification process is really, really good. It's now NBHWC certified, so there's all kinds of other stuff that we sort of added to the program so that you will come out of this with a more complete skill set, right? It's not just the stuff that I thought was important. There's a national board in the United States that overlaps with some boards in Europe and things like that, and we basically included all the stuff that they need for their certification. So y'all can sign up for it and check it out there, okay? Now, this person asked, is there something else that I would share that is like a framework like motivational interviewing that I would use? And the answer is absolutely, okay? So this is something I've talked about before, but I'm going to talk about it in a slightly different way. So I think if you want to understand how human beings work, both yourself and other people, I think the best model to use is Vedic psychology. Okay? Now, why do I think this is the best model? I'm not saying it's the best model, period. I'm saying if you, human being, who is not formally trained and is not going to spend 8 years becoming a psychiatrist or 5 to 6 years becoming a psychologist, and you want to understand how you work and other people work, I think Vedic psychology is the best model for that. So in the West, we have all kinds of ideas about psychology. This is why learning psychology is hard. Okay, so I'm going to just take So, you guys didn't see me there, but I have this. So I just grabbed some books off of my bookshelf. Let's go through them. Okay? These are all great books. Book number 1. Prisoners of Hate by Aaron Beck. CBT and Anger. Book number 2. Mentalization-Based Treatment for Personality Disorders. Excellent book. We just talked about narcissism. Is great. Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. Bought half price by Carl Jung. Excellent book. Less excellent book. The Red Book by Carl Jung, a reader's edition. This book is damn near incomprehensible. Okay? Not really the same thing, but The Life Divine by Aurobindo. Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. This is excellent by Judith Beck. This is way more practical. Okay? Psychodynamic Psychotherapy, a clinical manual. Pretty good. Great for introductory psychiatrists. Change of Heart. This is a little bit more, feely. This is not really a clinical manual, but it's a book. What psychology can teach us about spreading social change. Fine. Psychodynamic Formulation. Another pretty good book for starting out, but I much prefer this bad boy. This is what I use when I'm doing a psychodynamic formulation, which is the Psychodynamic Diagnostic Manual. Nancy McWilliams is great. But this is this. So, if you want to learn psychology from someone in the West, that's just 8 books. And on my bookshelf, I have that's maybe 5 to 10% of the books that I have on that bookshelf. I've got another one over here. So here's the problem. Is if you want to learn psychology from someone in the West, which of these theories is correct? Should I read the Red Book? Should I read CBT? Should I take a look at internal family systems? That one's over there. Should I read the Psychodynamic Diagnostic Manual? There's a lot of great information, but it's really hard to figure out what to read. And it's all useful. But if you're looking for a really simple model that will teach you about yourself and other people, I think Vedic psychology is way better. And why? One really simple reason. In the West, you have a bunch of people who are studying other people. But the problem is that if we look at the mind involves thoughts and emotions. Let's say, just as a simple, it's more than that, but let's just start there. The problem is that no scientist can observe either of these two things directly. Impossible. We have yet to figure out a way of detecting precisely what emotion or what thought someone is experiencing. So there is a fundamental weakness to Western psychology, which is that we cannot directly observe what we are trying to understand, which is why people write such big, thick books about it, because we have no direct observation, right? We can't say it is this. Instead, we have to like come up with all of these very complicated and useful. It's good in some ways. Love it. Not saying it's bad. But I'm saying if you're looking for one skill set, this is it. Very accessible. Vedic psychology was developed by the yogis, and the yogis were looking at themselves. So they had one advantage that no psychologist, psychiatrist on the planet has. They could observe their own thoughts. I mean, well, we all have that. Jung and Freud did a lot of self-work, right? But in terms of our methodologies don't involve thought observation directly, whereas the yogis, it involves thought observation. So here's what they learned, and here's how to use it if you want to understand other people. There is something called the antakarana. The antakarana is the internal instrument. That's what antakarana means. Okay? It's the internal instrument. Now, in the West, this gets translated as mind, but I think that mind is a terrible word. So if I ask you, what is the mind? It's thoughts. Is it thoughts? Is it emotions? Is it memories? What is it? Identity, personality. Internal instrument, I think, is a way more precise definition. It is the instrument that you as a human being have that is inside you. That's the definition. It's just the stuff inside. The instrument, my hand is an instrument that I have on the outside. My mouth is an instrument that I have on the outside. But the internal instrument is what we call, is the mind, right? I think it's a more precise definition. That's why I love Vedic psychology. I think it's actually more precise. And the reason it's more precise is because they have direct observation. It's easier to be precise when you can directly observe something. Okay? Now, the antakarana has 5 components. Chitta, manas, buddhi, ahamkar, and samskar. We're going to ignore these 2 for now, although I teach extensively, especially about samskar, but we'll talk about that later. If you understand the interaction of these 3 things, your ability to navigate other human beings is going to be so easy. Okay, let's understand how they work. Buddhi is your intellect or analytical capability. And by the way, I think part of the reason that our coaching program is so effective is because we take all of the required stuff that people have sort of found is useful for coaching, and then we usually teach our coaches this stuff too. So I think this is what gives our coaching program an edge and is responsible for some of the outcomes that we get. It's very accessible, okay? So when we think about analytical reasoning, when we think about logic, all this kind of stuff, this is buddhi. But then we have manas. So manas is judgment and emotion. Now this is where things deviate a little bit from Western psychology, because we think of judgment as an intellectual capability, right? The intellect judges that this is good and this is not good. But if you really look at your experience of it, if I try peanut butter and I say, I like peanut butter or I don't like peanut butter, that is not intellectual. That is a judgment. I'm saying I like it or I don't like it, or like, don't like. So this is what I love about Vedic psychology. If you were to ask a psychologist, and I'm sure there's psychologists or psychiatrists in chat now, I'm really curious what your answer would be. Which part of you likes and doesn't like things? Where does the liking and not liking come from? Right? It's like I'm so curious how people would answer this question. And this is what was so interesting for me, in training, is that I would learn all this, like I would read all these books and stuff. And I'm not saying they're not useful. They're incredibly useful. We just taught about narcissism. I use them all the time. But there were like some things that were just missing in the Western view. Like which part of your mind likes or doesn't like things. And it's like the hedonic circuit, maybe. See, people are saying emotions, people are saying taste buds, but like, which is it? So this is what's really interesting, is that the Vedic psychology model is based on the driver. So everything is explained from the driver's perspective. So if you sit in your mind, this is what you will observe. Okay? It's not senses that like or dislike things. Senses is what senses the taste, not the liking or disliking. This is perfect. I love it. Do you guys get that? My sense detects something cooking. Whether I find it revolting or delicious is a separate part. That's not the sense. That is a judgment that is made by the mind. So what they realized is that judgment, emotion, and like and don't like have a very similar quality. It comes from the same place. And this is the manas. This is the part of the internal instrument that has likes or dislikes and generates emotions. Because if you sort of think about it, and that may sound weird, why are we lumping likes and dislikes together with emotion? It's because both of them are very fast and very reflexive. You don't get to choose to feel it. It just happens. So they're like, okay, there's two parts of the mind. One is deliberate, one is analytical, one is intellectual, and one is like reflexive. So the key thing about the manas is that it's reflexive. Now we get to the fun part. Ahamkara. This is ego. So what is ego? It is everything that comes after the phrase I am. Ahamkara is the I feeling. That's literally what the translation is. The feeling of I. So I am a doctor, father, husband, gamer. That's what ahamkara or ego is in the West. In the East. Right? So if you look at your mind, this is not a thought and it is not a feeling. It is an identity. It is a part of you that you identify with this. And here's the cool thing. These three parts of your mind interact. And if you understand the way that they interact, this will solve 90% of your problems, in my professional opinion. I would say 100%. That's really what I believe, but I don't think 100% is nearly a defensible statement as 90%. Okay? So, what is the interaction between these things? So can you go to the gym every day? Yes or no? What do y'all say, chat? Can you go to the gym every day? Who can go to the... Okay. Why not? Why not? Why can't y'all go? I'm not allowed back. Fucking love you guys, man. Burnout. Chronic illness. I don't want to. I'll be out of mana. It depends. Fatigue builds up. Okay. Circumstances, motivation, etc. Okay. So if I were to ask you, can someone else go to the gym every day? You may say yes, right? You'll say it depends. Sure. But so the first thing to understand is that all of the statements of your intellect are shaped by your ahamkar. So if I believe I am a loser and you ask me a question, my analytical capability will be filtered through my ahamkar, my ego. Not always, but it usually happens that way. If I think I'm the best person on the planet, if I'm a raging narcissist, if I think I'm a winner, the analytical answers to my questions will be filtered through my ahamkar. Does that make sense? So if I ask, can you go to the gym every day? Depending on who you believe you are, The answer to that question will be yes or no or maybe or whatever. It'll change depending on your sense of identity, right? So if you tell an incel, if you ask someone who's a 10 out of 10 Chad about how to get women, they'll say, just put yourself out there, just try to have a good time, and it'll work out. If you ask an incel, how do you get women? The answer is it's impossible to. And there may be some attributes of them that are different, but this is what I want y'all to understand. Their analytical capability is going to be shaped by their ego. 100%. Right? Who I believe I am is going to shape my conclusions. Second thing to understand. Why does a humkar activate? A humkar activates because of manas. So anytime I experience unpleasantness, the ahamkara will activate to protect me. So if I feel sad, if I feel ashamed, the ahamkara will activate. Right? So we understand this in the West too. This is what we call the triggering of the narcissistic defense mechanism. It's not like, I mean, we're aware of this in the West. So I'll give you all an example. If I feel sad, right? If I get rejected by a woman, what is the ahamkar? I am a loser. This is what the ahamkar will say. All I feel, the emotion is just rejection. That's it. But then the ahamkar activates and makes it a part of my identity. So rejection leads to this statement. I am a loser. Now you may say to yourself, well, hold on a second. Why would the ahamkar activate in this way? The job of the ahamkar is to protect you from the manas. So when I feel bad in the manas, the ahamkar activates. And you may say, but how is this a protection? It is such a big protection. If you are a loser, then it's not your fault that you got rejected. If you are a loser, there's nothing you can do about it. This will help you soothe yourself very, 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 very well. Being a loser is such a protective identity. It protects you from these stupid things like effort. It protects you from these stupid things like trying and failing. It protects you from these terrible things like believing in yourself. Because if you believe in yourself and you hope, then you open yourself up to disappointment. It protects you from disappointment. It protects you from failure. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's so powerful. Think about it for a second. Another really good example of this, right? I used to self-sabotage a lot. I used to self-sabotage by committing 75%. And why would I never commit 100%? Because if I committed 100% and I lost, that means I'm a real loser. But if I only give 75%, I have the doubt in my mind. I have plausible deniability that I'm a loser. If I had tried harder, maybe I could have done it. I'm not a loser. I could have been a winner. I just couldn't bring myself to give 100%. Negative emotion, ahamkar, modifies your analytical capability. And this is why people who are butthurt believe they're logical, but are completely illogical. Right? The more emotionally activated you are, the less logical you will be. But if you ask that person, are you logical? They will say, yes, I'm 100% logical. You can try to have an argument with someone who is butthurt, someone who is tilting and inting down mid or whatever you want to do. It's never going to work. And this will lead to all kinds of frustration. So understand this fundamental sequence. Emotion, judgment, ego statement of protection, and modified intellect, shady intellect. If you understand this fundamental mechanism, it will help you so much in your own life and dealing with other people. Right? So if you're dealing with like a boss who's coming at you and asks for unreasonable things. Let's say your boss has unreasonable demands. So then what you do, you make the stupid mistake of trying to argue with them by using facts, and logic. Big mistake. These unreasonable demands are being driven by their ahamkar, by their ego, which in turn is being driven by their manas. They're getting pressure from the top. They're afraid that they're not going to get promoted. They know that they're not doing a very good job, that they should be doing a good job. So they feel insecure. They feel threatened. And their ego activates. You're great, bro. It's your employees who are slacking. And then you're going to make unreasonable demands. So instead, what you need to do, don't worry about this, focus on this. Help me understand it. So it sounds like it's really important that I work 80 hours a day for the next 16 years to get this work done. Help me understand where this pressure is coming from. Where is this like pressure coming from? Like what's going on? Like what necessitates this kind of work? Don't argue with them about whether it's possible or not possible. Deal with this. Go straight to the source. What is the emotional energy that is altering their logic? As long as this persists, it's going to be really hard. So once you deal with the emotion directly, once you calm down the manas, then something cool will happen. The ahamkara will calm down. Once the ahamkara calms down, then they can start to see reason. Okay, I understand that you're under an immense amount of pressure. I absolutely want to be a team player. I'm not sure that I'm capable of doing this. Once you calm down the manas, the whole structure will calm down. Next thing to understand about yourself. Right? So the more you make I statements, I am ... winner, loser, gamer, whatever. All of these things will create a filter for the world around you. Oh yeah, I don't like art because I'm a gamer. I can't ask her out or I can't ask him out because I'm a loser. I can't ask him out because I'm a girl. Girls don't ask out guys. Right? I am ... Think about all of the decisions in your life that have been shaped by the fatal words, I am ... I'm happy in this marriage. No, you're not. I'm a good wife. Maybe you may not be. Number one statement that gets people in my office is when a parent says, I'm a good parent. I'm a good parent. When a parent says that, in that way, their children end up in my office. Y'all understand? I am statements are very, very dangerous. Because they determine, this is really interesting. So your brain has this part that makes an action success calculation. Anytime you're trying to do something, if there's something that you want to do, it makes a calculation. What is the probability of success? Depending on the probability of success, it increases your motivation or decreases your motivation, right? This is why, like, we're not digging for gold in our backyard because our brain is like, there's no gold there. Like, we don't think that will be successful. Therefore, we are not going to do it. Your motivation is determined by the percent success of a calculation. This induces motivation. Now, here's the crazy thing. Identity determines this. Losers stay losers because they convince themselves that trying isn't going to work. And that's how they stay losers. Because they never try. So, since their brain convinces them there's no point in trying, then motivation decreases, right? Actually disappears. That's actually correct. No more motivation. And then they never try. And then they never get new data. And so they never can disprove themselves. And it becomes a mess. So this is the crazy thing. Your identity determines your belief about your chance of success. And so that's why in yoga, what we try to do is we try to reduce the strength of the ahamkar. You become an empty vessel. The goal is to be an empty vessel and then respond to the environment. Right? So when you say, but Dr. K, like let's talk about expertise for a second. So I am a doctor is different from I know some medicine. I know some psychiatry. These are not ego statements. These are facts. And if we're not careful, our ego will get in the way of facts. Oh, I'm nothing special. I'm average. No, you aren't. You're above average. That's a statement of fact, not a statement of ego. But in the West, we don't understand what ego is. So if anyone says, yeah, I'm exceptional, we call that ego. Even though it's not, it's just a statement of fact. And how egotistical, how narcissistic. My exceptionalism is not ego. It is a statement of fact. What fucking ego is that, bro? So ahamkar is I am, not I know or am capable of or whatever. Y'all understand the difference? So this is the framework that is really, really important. So how do you use this framework? Use it in a very simple way. For whatever analysis you have, doesn't matter, whatever logic you have, you ask yourself, how does my identity shape this logic? And so if you look at people who are black-pilled or red-pilled or whatever, this is huge. Man, it is like it is like gigantic. Very true politics and things like that as well. But their logic is 100% shaped by their identity. Everyone's is, to a certain degree. And then the identity is a response to usually negative emotion from the manas. So the way that we want to use this is for any logic that we have, what is the identity contribution to that? How do I reduce that identity? And then one way to reduce it is by disabling or processing the negative emotion that is driving the protective mechanism. So if you think that you can never find a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, you can never find a job, like you have all of this logic, you need to get back to the root emotion. And that's something we understand very well in psychiatry, right? Like we know this. We know that dealing with the emotions some people believe that emotions are the bottom of everything, that emotional work is sufficient. But this is the paradigm to use, y'all. And if you can calm your emotions, then the ego will calm down, and then you will start to think clearly. Then you will be able to look at your situation and say, the odds are against me, but I want to do it, so I'm going to try. Right? So for me, this was huge when I got rejected from medical school over and over and over and over again, because 119 rejections can really work wonders for your confidence, let me tell you what. But if you're trained in this stuff and you do not let them pile up, you don't let them become a part of your identity. Each rejection comes with an emotion, so be it. Another one. But as long as you don't let those emotions integrate into an identity of you, who you are, abstract out into an identity, you will be fine. You will be able to never give up. Never giving up is really simple. All you have to do is avoid the aggregation of each of your failures. Then you will never give up. Easiest thing on the planet. Just avoid the aggregation. It is in the aggregation of these events that we develop these abstract ideas about ourselves, and those are the things that determine your future. This is so important to understand. It is not 1,000 failures that determines your future. It is the 1,000 failures that you combine into an identity that will become your destiny, because then that'll affect your action success calculation. So the most important framework that I would add with motivational interviewing, if you're working with someone, is to understand this framework. Ask yourself, what is going on in their buddhi? What is going on in their ahamkar? What is going on in their manas? What are the judgments? likes and dislikes and emotions that they're experiencing, how is that affecting their identity of self? Because the identity of self is going to protect against those things. So the narcissistic injury is rooted in insecurity, right? The narcissistic defense is rooted in insecurity. That's what we know. Since I'm ashamed of my appearance, I'm going to be very narcissistically protected against attacks on my appearance. So you can read people like a fucking book. If they have some ego, you automatically know the flip side of that is what their insecurity is. It's that simple. So easy. And if they have perverted logic, you can immediately, the perversion of their logic signals to you what is going on in the ego, because you have the truth of the matter and then you have some modification. And in that modification, it's an upward deflection. That means something is going on in the ego. Depending on, I don't know if this makes sense, the kind of change they have in their logic tells you what's going on in their ego. Right? So if someone says, oh yeah, it's impossible for me to ever find a job, that tells you what's going on in their ego. That tells you who you think they are. It's so simple. And if you guys want to understand this stuff, go and watch our old interviews. Like, this is what I'm doing. And you'll be able to see, you'll be able to track very easily. I mean, maybe you have to train in it. You have to get good at it, but you'll be able to see. Right? Because the cool thing about the antakarana is there's a logic to it, which is why psychiatry is a thing. If it was all random, we wouldn't be able to make any hypotheses. So this is like a system that is really, really powerful. We teach a lot about it. If y'all are interested, check out HGI. If like literally the question was, this thing that you taught your coaches was really helpful, what else do you teach your coaches? This is at the top of the list. Okay. The other thing is that if y'all are interested in, so a lot of our coaches utilize these things. So the other way that you can learn this stuff, and it can be really helpful to work with someone like a coach who understands these concepts and then will help you see insight into yourself. So that's the other thing that is really simple, right? So you can like work with them. The way I learned this stuff, by the way, my best teacher for this was I did some samskaric work on myself as part of my education. So I had a therapist basically do this with me. And as I went through my own samskars, I was like, holy crap, this makes perfect sense. So I was on the receiving end of this, basically as a patient, and it helped so much. Okay. Let's do another one.
I used to have crippling anxiety and hypervigilance. Getting groceries was overwhelming, and I couldn't handle trying new things or letting my kids do so. Intrusive thoughts of dangers from common to absurd plagued me. 3 years ago, while meditating, I had the sensation of stepping backwards in a direction that doesn't exist. In this new mental space, I met a knight in armor and intuitively knew this was the part of my mind that had been working overtime to keep me safe. I told the knight, "You must be so exhausted. Thank you for everything you've done, but I'm an adult now, and I've got it from here." 2 days later, I narrowly avoided a terrible car crash with my toddler in the car. Normally, this would have dysregulated me at least a full day, but I was shocked to realize I was fine 20 minutes later. A month later, I went horseback riding with my oldest daughter's Girl Scout troop, got thrown off the horse, and literally got back on the horse. 2 months later, I let my son try Taekwondo, which he'd been asking for 2 or 3 years at that point. And then when he wanted me to take the class with him, I moved past my fear of being on the mat in front of an audience of other parents and joined him for a good 3 years. The overnight changes from that meditation session have stayed strong for over 3 years now. My life is just unrecognizable. My current therapy work with IFS and EMDR feels very, very similar, but slower and like a lesser version, but the same kind of effect, just not overnight. So my question is, what the heck is that mental space? Because it's not the cheetah cache. And what's the neuroscience explanation for what actually happened to me?
Okay. So this is another one of our community winners. How do you answer this? Let me think for a second. Okay. So, sometimes when people meditate, let's start with this. Let's start with a series of questions. So, this is a case of someone who had an experience in meditation that seems to have made a profound impact on their anxiety, which has been persistent. Right? So they used to be really, really anxious, and then like this thing happened. It had some imagery with it of a knight who was protective, and the benefits have persisted. And then this person has done work with IFS, internal family systems, EMDR, eye movement desensitization retraining. EMDR is a trauma-oriented intervention. IFS is, I don't know if it's, internal family systems is about unifying the different parts of yourself. Okay, understanding that you have all kinds of voices within you. And this person says that this seems like a slower and less effective. Is sort of what I heard. Maybe slower, right? So not as rapidly effective. So let's remove less effective. Right? So it's a slower version of that work. So what the hell is going on? And then the person asks, what is the neuroscience explanation? Okay. The neuroscience explanation, I don't know. So I can hypothesize a couple of things, and let's just say that let's use, like, we're going to go more evidence-based towards less evidence-based, okay? So let's talk about neuroscience for a second. So this person sounds like they've been meditating for a while, and we know from studies on meditation that all kinds of things happen. So meditation will reduce the feeling of anxiety. How? It'll reduce the feeling of anxiety through interrupting the chain of thoughts. So meditation strengthens attentional control. And if we look at anxiety, what is anxiety? It's the inability to control your attention. You start worrying about something and you can't stop. We also know that meditation increases, generally speaking, parasympathetic nervous system activity. And when you increase the parasympathetic nervous system, you reduce anxiety. Okay? So this is an immediate effect. This happens within minutes. This happens maybe over the course of weeks. And then long-term meditators will have some other kind of architectural change. We know that meditation can also affect our default mode network, which is our sense of identity and who we believe we are. This can change over the course of months to years. And this can have profound effects on our sense of self and the way that we navigate the world, right? So we feel connected. We're just not so caught up in ourselves. We have compassion for other people. There's all kinds of things that happen. Meditation also improves empathy. Right? So this person had a lot of compassion for a part of their mind. So they sort of got freed up from this knight who was busy protecting them. They're like, you can rest. I can handle things. Right? So I detect a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion. I'm an adult now. So what is a neuroscience perspective? This. Now, did this happen in this way? Who the hell knows? Right? There's more and more I could say about the neuroscience mechanisms of meditation. But is that what happened? Who the hell knows? So, there's also something that is really common. And this is something that psychiatry has had, or psychology and psychiatry have had a very contentious relationship with meditation and spiritual practice for many years. And that is because this is hopefully this is clearly factual. Maybe it's my bias, but I think we definitely have cases consistently of human beings who have psychological problems, who meditate, and those problems seem to get fixed. That there is a persistent benefit, which seems to happen suddenly. Right? Where they have this moment in meditation, and after that moment in meditation, the person is changed. There is a change. And I think for a long time, psychiatry and psychology felt very threatened by this because meditation was doing shit that happens way slower for us and arguably, I shouldn't say less consistently. So I think the strength of IFS and EMDR is that it is way more reliable than meditation. Because it's not like this person set out trying to cure their anxiety. They were just meditating, and this random buff, you get some kind of random buff if you're lucky. But people do change with meditation. I think that is a fact. Do they change consistently? No. Do they change all the time? No. Can you control the direction of the change or when the change is going to happen? Do you have to meditate for a year or 5 years or a day? Or no one knows. There's no consistency, but there is change, and the change feels damn permanent. And doing things the psychological way feel way slower. So what the hell is going on? So I have a sense of what's going on, but is it this? I don't know. Does that make sense? I can hypothesize. We know what the neuroscience changes of meditation are, but does this constellation of things result in this thing? No. That's the whole problem, is that even though we know that meditation does all of this in the brain, everyone who meditates gets all of these things, but all of these things are not the monumental change that someone experiences in a moment in meditation. That's what's so damn confusing about it. So what happened? Who knows? From a neuroscience perspective. Now, if you want to understand what happened, this is what I believe happens. Here's you. And then you have something called your mind. And your mind is all kinds of activity. There are times when the activity is more calm, like when you're looking at a sunset. There are times when the activity is engaged and present, like a video game. And there are times where the activity is an absolute mess, like a panic attack. But this is all within the mind, right? So we have all kinds of mental states. And we tend to believe that we are our mind. But we get into some weird stuff. Because even though we have a mind, and in psychiatry, we work, generally speaking, within the mind. So we try to modify this. In psychiatry, we try to move from here to here, or we try to move from here to here. We make modifications within the mind. But meditation doesn't care about what's going on in your mind, right? The whole point is to move beyond mind, to move past mind. Move away, just move past the mind. We want to shut the mind off when we meditate. And then the question is, when we shut the mind off, what happens? So we have the capacity for conscious awareness. Now, if you're a biological reductionist, you will say that consciousness is something that arises out of neurons. Neurons just create consciousness. And there's good evidence for this. Best evidence for this is anesthesia. There's really good evidence for this. Because if I alter your neurons by giving you something like ketamine or midazolam, Versed, I put something in your brain and your conscious awareness disappears. There is a causal relationship between doing things to your neurons and doing things to your awareness. But there's something called the hard problem of consciousness, which is that there's no clear, discernible reason why we need consciousness, right? So our neurons could just respond to stimuli and send, like, we get hunger signals from our gut, we get hunger signals from our liver, our neurons detect those hunger signals, activate certain parts of our eyes, activate our feet, we walk to the fridge, we grab some food, we put it in the we put it in the microwave, we heat it up, we eat it, now the signals have all changed. So the whole neurological, biological apparatus can function completely fine without conscious awareness. There's no reason for it. You can just, if it's all neurons, we don't need consciousness. So if we look at the yogic system, here's what happens, okay? Consciousness is up here. This is something called Brahman. This is collective consciousness. This is without form. So it has no qualities. It's just pure stuff. It doesn't have shape or form. And then what happens is, out of this universal consciousness, we get these little drips. And this is what we call an Atman. Atman is the Sanskrit word for soul. And then this soul inhabits a body. And then there's this thing called our mind in here. And so we sort of are out of touch with our soul. And our soul has a conduit to this thing. And, like, look, I'm just answering what my opinion is. I'm not saying this is true. So what I have observed as a long-term meditator, as I've probably, not even counting streaming, okay? So I've taught easily 1,000 people how to meditate, maybe 2,000, maybe 5,000. I don't know. I lost count at some point. I never really counted, but it's got to be up there. And as someone who's taught meditation, as someone who has had patients who I teach to meditate, what I have learned is that moving past the mind and connecting to whatever is beyond mind is healing. That all kinds of crap exists in our mind. Trauma, conditioning, habits, perceptions, cognitive biases. All this crap exists in the mind, and you can do psychotherapy and work on it in the mind. But that through meditative practice, you can bypass all of this stuff. And this is what's really interesting, right? So meditation is a very interesting evidence-based psychiatric practice. And what makes it very special is that it works for all diagnoses. Maybe not technically all, but let me be a little bit more precise with my language. There are studies that show that it helps mood disorders. There are studies that show it helps anxiety disorders. There are studies that show that it helps ADHD. There are studies that show that it helps personality disorders. There are studies that it helps OCD. And this is really special. This is, like, super cool. Because generally speaking, we think about these as unique pathologies, right? It's like a flat tire is not the same thing as a broken steering wheel or an empty gas tank or a broken windshield or a steering, these are all different problems. So it is very unusual in psychiatry to have something that works for everything. Actually, maybe not so unusual, because psychotherapy, you can also say, works for everything. But it's pretty cool, because despite there are a lot of distinct pathologies, and where do these pathologies exist? They all exist in the mind, right? These are all like things that happen in the mind or in the brain. You could argue that ADHD isn't really a mental thing, it's a neurological thing, so maybe that's not really fair. I could talk for an hour about that. But generally speaking, psychiatry is not neurology, and ADHD is a psychiatric diagnosis, and psychiatrists are doctors of the mind, not doctors of the brain. So in our system, we think about ADHD as a mental diagnosis. So what's going on here? Meditation bypasses the mind and moves beyond it. And what I've observed in myself and the people that I teach meditation to, and by the way, this is why I didn't stop teaching meditation when I became a psychiatrist, because I've seen this shit time and time and time again, is when you connect to that which is beyond mind, it just fixes shit. Period. It just fixes things. It seems to go wherever it is needed. Now, what I'm talking about here is not truth, is not correct. It is my best attempt at observation. It is actually not observation. It is observations that I've made and me trying to make sense of these observations. So what is going on? All I know is that when you connect with Atman, you will be healed. Does it work through the default mode network? That's a big part of it. Right? And we know that meditation disables the default mode network. We know that psychedelics, to the degree at which they disable the default mode network, correlate with healing. So when you connect with, I know this is going to sound wild, right? And I'm skeptical of this myself, but when you connect with the divine, you will get healed. Like, that's just sort of what happens. And this is like literally like this. I mean, this is not something, this was a contest winner. So someone submitted a voicemail and there was a process which floated this voicemail to the top. And this is why I teach meditation. Because I know that as a psychiatrist, I can get maybe 60 to 70% efficacy with psychotherapy and medication. If I'm really lucky, someone will get really, really like permanent remission or will feel healed and things like that. But as someone who's a practitioner, I like to take the long shot. Right? There's a chance if these people meditate, and I've seen it time and time and time again, you connect with something that is beyond you. And in this space, you feel like a different person. You don't even feel like you. You connect with something that makes you no longer you. And like this person was saying, I stepped back into a place that does not exist. This is the language of transcendental meditation. Not like TM, like TM, like not the trademark transcendence. This is transcendence in meditation. That's why we use the word transcendence, because you are stepping into a place that does not exist. This is without roop, without form. How can you step into a place that does not exist? The way that you step into a place that does not exist is you hang out here in the collective unconscious, which is without form. That's why people will use paradoxical or contradictory language to describe these experiences. I was someone way beyond myself. I stepped into a place that does not exist. That's how you know the real meditation is happening. And that's like this has been phenomenologically studied. So we can take people who have these transcendental experiences, and how do you know someone has a transcendental experience? Because they describe it in a way that does not make sense. I stepped into a place that does not exist. I stepped into a place behind myself. Like, that doesn't make sense. You can't step into a place behind yourself. You were stepping backwards. That's not what this person said. So the experience of these things is qualitatively different from an ordinary everyday experience. It defies our understanding. I know exactly what this person means. And if you have had a transcendental experience in meditation, you may understand exactly what they mean too. To step in a place that is beyond you, outside of you. And when you step into these places, the best way I can understand it, right? So I've tried to like calculate and analyze this, is you get this spurt of like divine energy. And then the spurt of divine energy goes to where it needs to go. In the same way that your body has this really wonderful like clotting mechanism where your platelets like go where they need to go. You don't have to direct them. They know where the cut is and they automatically go there and they start platelet aggregating. They're just doing their thing. That's what it feels like. You get this sort of super conscious platelet that enters your psyche and then goes and patches up whatever needs to be patched up. This has been my observation. Could be completely insane. Could have a very understandable, biologically explainable mechanism, which we just haven't figured out yet. Right? We talked about all those. Like, there's what happens from a neuroscience explanation, something like this. But this is what happens. When you achieve transcendental states in meditation, like, people get like fucking changed from it. Oftentimes, usually in a good way. And so that's what I think happens. And I'm really thrilled for this person. And like, it's like these stories that I hear, I mean, I've been through it, done it with people, and hear from, for every one person that I've helped with this journey, I've heard about at least 100 more who have gone through it. Right? And that's why I believe this stuff, because it's like, clearly something is going on and there's some data behind it. The problem is that it's really inconsistent. So the nice thing about psychotherapy, things like IFS and EMDR, is that they're reliable. So the biggest problem with meditation is, if you ask me, Dr. K, if I have crippling anxiety like this person, how long do I need to meditate before this happens? The answer is, I have no clue. That's the big problem with meditation. That's so damn frustrating about it. What is the outcome that you can expect? When I teach meditation to my patients, the outcome that I tell them to expect is the outcome from the literature, not stories like this. What can you expect? 20 to 30% improvement in your anxiety if you practice for 8 to 12 weeks. That's what we're probably going to get. That's what's reliable. But the truth of the matter is, there's so much more that is capable, that is doable. And that's why I love people like Marsha Linehan. Like, she was someone who had borderline personality disorder, like studied mindfulness, got a lot better from it, and then like protocolized it. And now DBT is one of the hottest treatments out there because it helps a lot of people who other forms of psychiatry have been insufficiently successful at helping. Seems anecdotal. It is absolutely anecdotal. And that is what is so hard about it. This is why psychiatrists don't teach meditation. I mean, more and more psychiatrists and psychologists are, but we're not trained in meditation precisely because it's anecdotal. It is not reliable. You can do this for 20 years and not achieve. And I mean, I have a good hypothesis why. We can go into that if y'all want. But like, this happens. You know, this absolutely happens. And so what goes on? I mean, you connected with that which is divine within you, and it healed you. I think that's the best way to put it. Okay, why? Okay, let's understand. So here's the biggest problem with meditation. Meditation is an internal practice. And what I've noticed is that there are many people who go through the motions of meditation. They sit and they observe their thoughts. They sit and they observe their thoughts. They sit and they observe their thoughts, but they don't put their whole totality into it. They do the actions of meditation without doing the internal work, or their internal work is precise or imprecise or hands-off. Right? So they'll do the form of meditation. They'll sit and observe their breath. And maybe they'll really observe their breath very diligently for 20 years. Like, I don't know. But what I've noticed is that a lot of people like meditate as the verb. So they'll meditate for 5 years, they'll meditate for 10 years, but they don't do the focusing of their consciousness. Like, when I meditate, so I sort of meditate every day, but part of the reason that I don't meditate the same way every day is because meditation for me can be rejuvenating, yes, but it is also the most intense thing that I do. So I'll give you all an example. So, you know, there's a great meditation practice that I love, which is find the moment where inhalation becomes exhalation. And these are powerful practices, but they're so hard. They require, or another really good one is observe your breath without changing it. Just observe your breath without changing it. And it's really hard. So it's funny, you know, the most search meditation practice was Trataka. And I think there's something about, I think Trataka is like special to me. But Trataka is a really good example of another practice where Antartrataka, if y'all have tried that, is like a really good example of how hard meditation is. It requires your totality, and it requires the totality of your concentration without effort. And that's what makes it so hard. So I see a lot of people who go through the motion of meditation. And when you go through the motion of meditation, you'll get the benefits that studies will say. People will use like meditation apps. But the kind of meditation that you do from an app, you can do it the right way. But generally speaking, a guru will teach it to you. They'll teach you this weird balancing of like complete, there's all kinds of stuff. So zero expectation, complete dedication. So it's so interesting, but like the mantra practice that I do was something that I didn't realize that that's what I was doing until I, did it for a while. I just did it and did it with a lot of dedication for many years without expecting a result. And like the results have been gigantic. And so I think that a lot of people will it's hard to describe, but they'll go through the motion of meditating without really meditating. And by go through the motion, what I mean is they will do the verb, but there's an internal aspect of meditation. That's not just concentration. It's to put your full, observe the breath. People will say, okay, I'm observing the breath for years. But what have you learned about the breath? Because if you observe it for 5 years, you should understand it in a deep, deep, deep way. You should understand all kinds of nuances from the breath. If you've been doing breath meditation for 5 years, you should understand some aspects of svara. You should understand that every time you exhale, not only is there a dominant nostril, but there are 5 regions of your nose that the breath comes out of. There are 5 patterns of exhalation within your nostril. And this is the kind of stuff that when you meditate, I was going to say legitimately, that's not the right word. There's an arrogance to that word. What I have observed is that when people meditate with this degree of vigor, these kinds of experiences are more common. Wait, there is 100%, maybe more. So we can try this right now if y'all want. And it's no problem if people have difficulty with this because it requires a lot of subtle awareness. So if you close your eyes and you pay attention to your exhalation, what you'll notice, I'll offer just a tiny bit of guidance. This once. Maybe I've done it before, but I don't think so. What does it mean to observe the breath? If these are your nostrils, this is the tip of your nose. This is the area around your lips. What you will notice is that when you exhale, not only is there a dominant nostril, which has your breath going out, but that the breath will come out over here, over here, over here, over here, or over here. That it'll come out at the front, it can come out at the back, it can come out on the side, and there are 5 distinct ways that the breath comes out. And then that's just, it's a big step, but it's like that's just the beginning. This is Svara Yoga, the yoga of breath. Right? So then deviated septum can interfere with this stuff. Then another practice. So what are y'all able to detect which region of the nostril it's coming out of? Okay, right? So some people are saying yes and some people are saying no. So this is the kind of thing where it's like if you are... So I'll give you all follow-up practice, okay? So if you are someone who cannot detect this, no problem whatsoever, don't worry about it. first of all. But try it every day. So this is great. For those of y'all that don't detect it, you can learn real meditation. Because what I'm telling you is if you try it every day until you detect it, I want you to close your eyes right now if you don't detect it and feel with every fiber of your being. Pay attention. The closest attention. You just tried for 3 fucking breaths. That's nothing. Give it your all. Right? Really try to feel it. Try to detect, put all of your concentration and all of your awareness into one nostril. Okay? That's what real meditation is. It's so hard. So this is what I'm saying. Like this takes, and do it for a year and then tell me you can't feel it. Do it for 20 minutes a day for 1 year, 365 days in a row, and then tell me you can't feel it. That is real meditation. This is the kind of concentration that is necessary. And the problem is when like we teach like ordinary meditation, these kinds of experiences are rare because some people stumble into this. Okay? But the cool thing is if you do meditation in this way, the likelihood of this experience rises drastically. Not this particular experience, but the likelihood of a transcendental experience. You need complete one-pointedness. And when you have complete one-pointedness and you live there for a while, then you will transcend. There's even layers above that. Now, for those of you that were able to detect, there is a follow-up question. What are all of the regions that you can experience this? Right? So I drew some random things on the iPad. That may be where they are. That may not be where they are. Who knows? So you should map out all of the regions for yourself. That's step 1. Step 2. Figure out why do they change? How often do they change? What is the pattern of change? Step 3, what is your physiology for each of these states? What is your mental functioning for each of these states? What are these different patterns? And I'm sort of giving you guys a little bit of a hint, right? So I said there are 5. Maybe I'm wrong. And as you go deeper and deeper, you'll discover certain things about it. And this is like real meditation. And that's just steps 1, 2, and 3. This is just the beginning of the journey. The journey goes really far, y'all. Like really far in a very, very fun way. What I like about meditation more than anything else is it's the final frontier. And the reason it's the final frontier is because the rest of the world can be explored and that exploration can be transmitted to you. People can map out the continents, they can develop technologies, and you can benefit from all of that mapping out. But when it comes to exploration of your own consciousness, you are the only one who can do it. Because you're the only one who even knows it exists. I don't even, like, you know, you don't even know. Like, I could be a bot. I could be an AI. You have no experience of my consciousness. Right? And someone's saying this is so similar to the Weird Stuff membership stream. Yes. Right? Someone's saying, can you start a live streaming meditation, whatever. So like, this is the kind of stuff we cover way more on the membership side. And the reason that we do it on the membership side is because the YouTube algorithm doesn't tend to like these sorts of things. So be careful. It's not solipsism. This is a critical mistake. Y'all have to be super careful about this. The moment that you call it solipsism is the moment that your intellect takes charge. Your intellect says, oh, I know what this is, and shrugs. If you have that attitude, you will never put your attention into it because the intellect says, oh, we know this. There's no point in exploring. Be very careful about that kind of thing. Right? So one of the biggest dangers on the journey of meditation is the intellect claiming knowledge over the practice. Because once you are like, oh, it's this thing, then notice what happens to your vigor. You're not going to give 100% if the intellect says, oh yeah, I know what this is. I understand this already. If you understand it already, you won't give 100% because you don't need to. You've already figured it out. So we did a stream over on the membership side about finding a guru at some point. So if you guys want more guidance, things like that, if you guys like this kind of stuff, like we have a bank of lectures about this sort of stuff. And by the way, next Weird Stuff lecture is ready. So the other thing is on the membership side, we tend to do sequential lectures. So we've done Weird Stuff Part 2, I think, right? Or Weird Stuff Part 3. But we like keep on going. And what I really like about it, and the reason that we don't do it here is because generally speaking, what we've observed, and I'm sure y'all will understand this, every subsequent thing that you teach on the internet, fewer people stay with you, right? So a lot of people come and go. So the problem with like live streaming and YouTube is that generally speaking, we'll sometimes do part 2s and stuff like Puer Eternus. And by the way, there's a Puer Eternus part 3. Like we'll sometimes do subsequent stuff because it's just too good not to, but it becomes really hard because if you do a part 15, like no one is good, like very few people are going to pay attention. So if y'all are dedicated enough and are willing to commit like time and energy, then definitely check out the membership stuff. There's a bank of stuff there that y'all can sift through. Okay. All right, y'all. It's 2:44. Thank y'all so much for submitting the voicemails. Awesome. Awesome. Absolutely love hanging out with y'all. It's such a privilege for this to be my job. And like, man, I'm so excited for y'all. I know it's like, I know y'all are struggling. Like some of y'all are really struggling. I get that. I really do. But man, life has so much to offer and just like keep at it. Like being a part of this community is a huge step in the right direction. Not saying that we're better than anybody else, but it signals, it's not that we are great. It is that you are signaling and you are putting forth effort into like learning about yourself, working on yourself. And I'm telling you guys, like I've been in the dark parts. I don't know if I've been in places that are as dark as you are, but like there is light at the end of the tunnel. And if you're here, you're already like halfway through. And that's what's so challenging about this stuff is that, you know, most of the work that happens under the surface. And so you put forth effort, but and it feels like you're not making much progress. And that's just because that's how like human beings work. We don't really, like mental change is not linear. It tends to happen, it's kind of like, you know, drilling for oil, where you drill and drill and drill, and then you hit the oil and then it comes out on its own. But for a lot of time, like doing mental work can feel very, very difficult because you put in a lot of effort, you don't see any yield. But then something happens, you have a breakthrough, and then like there's a change. So keep at it, y'all. Keep at it. I know we've been seeing a lot of really positive stuff recently. I think the Puers in the audience are getting their shit together, which is like wild, but that's great. Anyway, thank you guys so much for coming, and we'll see y'all, I imagine